Hello, my name is Nazo. I'm an Orthodox composer and choir director, and these are my top 5 tips for Orthodox choir directors. First off, I want to say thank you to my patrons for their continuous support. Without you, I wouldn't be able to make my music free and available on my website. So you can download my music at nazozakak.com, or you can visit my Patreon page if you would like to see more. So, tip number 1, give your singers something to look at. We can't always be yelling at them to watch us if we don't give them something to look at. So, this is best done by eye contact. We don't stare at them for a prolonged amount of time. What I like to do is usually spend about a half a second to 1 second moving from each singer, but making clear eye contact with them as we're singing and praying. What this does is it lets them know that you see them, that you're supporting them, especially if you have a nice friendly face. That is very important. We want to be supportive of our singers. Now, we've all been guilty of burying our face in the music and directing with our hands while we're following along, and this isn't really interesting. There's nothing to see when you're doing that. So, as much as you can, memorize the music, look at your singers, give them a nice friendly smile as you're looking at them. Another thing you can do is do the gestures of prayer during the service. When we cross ourselves, when the priest says, let us bow our heads to the Lord, and you say, to thee, O Lord, and you actually bow your head, if it's in your church's practice to kneel, there are many gestures we can do to indicate that we are praying. We're not doing this for show, for outward prayer. We're doing this as a reminder to ourselves that this is what we should be doing. And even though we are singing and we're standing with proper singing posture, our job, first and foremost, is to pray the service. Tip number 2 is to find and raise your standard. It's very easy to get complacent in an Orthodox choir, to get used to, well, this is how we do things. We have our liturgy music, we have our Vespers music, and we go through it and everyone sings along and it's nice. Now, there's something to be said for that. However, things will go stale soon, and you cannot improve if your standard is not higher than where you are. The tricky thing about Orthodox choirs is that you have singers from a variety of backgrounds. You have some people who are absolutely wonderful trained musicians. You have some people who can kind of read music. You have some people who think they can read music, and you have other people who will just flat out acknowledge they have no idea what they're doing. So, what needs to be done here is you need to find how to raise the standard for each individual person, as well as the general sound of your group. It's okay to challenge them to always be aiming for something a little bit higher than what you think they're capable of doing. That's the only way to improve, and I think you'll be surprised at how they can be up to the task. Number 3 is to create variety within the choir. There are a few ways of doing this. You could obviously direct a piece of music in a slightly different way. You could have some more dynamic range. But we don't want to vary things too much because this is a prayer service. This is not a performance. So some other techniques you can do can include mixing up where the singers stand, right? You could have an alto standing next to a bass, standing next to a tenor, etc., not standing in their sections as you typically may have them do, just so they can start paying attention in a different way, listening in a different way, tuning themselves to each other in a different way. You could have different people read different parts of the service. There are many things you can do that don't necessarily involve changing the music, but variety is important. Even if you have someone else come up and direct a piece in your place or direct a litany, something simple, and more importantly, to give your singers an easier way to be fully engaged in the service. Tip number 4, educate your singers. This can be done simply by talking to them about what the text in the service means. In rehearsals, I like to go over what type of hymn is being sung. Is this a hymn that ends with praise? Is this a hymn where we are asking for intercession from our Lord or from a saint? Is this a praising hymn for Mary? Is this a historical hymn that is giving you all kinds of context and telling a story? Is this a theological hymn which is expanding upon our theology and explaining to us for example, the nature of the Trinity? Having your singers engaged and understand what the hymn is about is a great way to have them, first off, surprisingly, learn the music faster, and secondly, be more involved during the service. They're going to remember these lessons for longer. Tip number 5 Remember that your singers are vulnerable. If I remember the first time I went and joined the choir, I was incredibly nervous. I was also a bit awestruck by how much I understood how a liturgy works then, how it's a dialogue between the priest and the congregation. And I was a bit overwhelmed by all the different page turns and the different sections we had to go to and what the variables were and understanding the service. And I was very self-conscious of my voice. You have to remember, many people who sing in your choir may not be professional singers. They may be singing just because no one else is doing it. They may be curious about it, but they don't know how to use their voice. While it is our job to get the best sound possible, we don't want to do that at the expense of hurting our singers. We don't want to do that at the expense of making ourselves more important or seeming tyrannical. So bear in mind the first time you started singing in a choir, how that may have felt. Bear in mind that you have people who may not be coming from a musical background. And bear in mind, this relates to my first point, that if you make eye contact with them, may it remind you that you are connected to these singers. You are one of them, the one who is in charge of keeping it all together, and most importantly, in charge of when a mistake happens. It has to fall all on you so that you tell them to move on, you keep them focused, and you are supporting them. Thank you for watching, and again, thank you to all of my patrons for their generous support. I am available for workshops, for private lessons. If you're a new choir director who has recently fallen into the position and you need just a few extra pointers, you're welcome to reach out. If you're a seasoned director and need your music typeset a little bit differently or something arranged differently for your choir, please feel free to reach out. All of my work is done in service for the church, so I'm available, and you can reach me at nazozakak.com, or you can find me on my Patreon. Again, thank you.